Hello everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I'm Sean Butler, Bugsy Malone's over there. This is episode 125, I think, of Tottenham Walks at the Spurs Talk Show. I think I've just said that already. A happy, healthy new year to you guys. My wishes are pushed out in that direction. Sorry for my tardiness in bringing content out over the last 4 or 5 days. One of the reasons is my gimbal on my recording thing here is wobbly and rattly, so I need to get that fixed. Second thing is, the kind of Tottenham mood right now is really horrible place to be. In WhatsApp groups, falling out with friends over opinions about Daniel Levy, which is madness. On Twitter, I see people just calling each other the worst things in the world, all because they just don't see eye to eye, generally on Daniel Levy and Enoch, and can't understand the fact that someone else doesn't see it the way that I see it. That kind of thing. But it is what it is. That's football, that's Tottenham, that's life, I guess. Everyone is polarised, I guess, right now on many things. So why would Tottenham be any different? Well, look, to me, just for what it's worth, guys, I 100% respect and appreciate and admire anyone that's got a mission statement that they consider to be, where the ends justify the means, as long as the means are reasonable or logical. And look, before I get into where I'm going to go with it, my stance generally on Daniel Levy and Enoch right now, the ownership generally, is that I think they should leave. I've been saying it for, I guess, about a month or two now on the channel. Ever since the noise that Manchester United and Liverpool were going to be bought out or likely bought out by people with sugar daddy ownership models, at that point you have to shake hands with reality, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But I've also always been open-minded to Daniel Levy and Enoch leaving. I've just never been on board with the Enoch out rationale. I've never really agreed with this perspective or narrative that they're cancers and parasites of the football club. To me, I think that if you are responsible for finances, whether you are an individual, when you're responsible for your own finances, whether you're a charity, whether you're a business, small, medium or large, whether you're a government, and you're in charge of money, then you have a responsibility to live within your means, where your expenses should not outweigh or outlay more than what you have coming in. A government that works to a budget deficit year after year after year, that's a problem. If you're an individual and you have a credit card lifestyle, that's a problem. If you're a business and you're taking out loans all the time to try and invest in whatever it is you're doing, your product or service, but you have no real method of eventually making it back, that's a problem. And to me, all of the clubs that have generated the most amount of success over the last 20 years fall into one of two categories in comparison to Tottenham Hotspur. They either have significantly bigger fan bases with significantly bigger branding and significantly better access to ongoing revenue streams. So Arsenal is a good example in terms of fan base. Manchester United is the best example in terms of like a money printing machine. Or the other clubs that have come along recently, they have sugar daddy ownership models where they just take money that the club doesn't create, inject it into the club on an ongoing basis to buy what they want, and then find out the ways to circumvent apparent financial fair play rules. For what it's worth, they're not worth the paper that they're written on. The next version of FFP is even worse than the previous one. It allows for more wiggle room, for more circumvention, and for more avoidance, and it's difficult. Tottenham Hotspur work within their means. That should be, in my opinion, applauded, not held up as a symptom of cancerous behaviour or parasitic entities that control the club. I find those sorts of terms abhorrent. I find them abusive. I find them really unnecessary. I wouldn't call my worst enemy that, let alone somebody that I think has done a really, really good job. People that have done really good jobs of taking us from where we were, a lower mid-table team that occasionally won a cup, to a team where we now have the right to abuse each other over why it is that we're not winning titles. That gap closing is because of, in no small part, the decision making of smart ownership who did that whilst also making ends meet every single year. So I will never be Levy out. I'll never attach myself to the movement if the movement continues to reflect on our ownership with such resentment. Because I choose to view it through a different lens. I'm not saying it's the right way or the wrong way, it's just my way is different to theirs. So whilst I am Levy go, Levy sell, whatever, because I think that right now, the unfortunate truth and the unfortunate reality is that whilst it shouldn't be this way, money in football is the root, the lowest common denominator of everything that is wrong with the game. And that unfortunately, if you can't beat them, join them. You know, so if Tottenham do want to win trophies on the regular over the next 20 years, then with the system as it is, having a model where you make ends meet isn't going to fly. You need to be a credit card lifestyle company and just hope that the ownership is both the bank and the borrower, like they are at Newcastle, like they were at Chelsea, like they are at Manchester City. And that's the only way, I guess, you can get to a position where you could then over time grow your fan base to the likes of Manchester United size or even Arsenal size. Arsenal, by the way, have got allegedly 65% more fans than Tottenham Hotspur have worldwide. So just to put things into context, when you have a higher fan base, you can draw more revenue streams, right? But to me, the problem isn't the owners. The problem is money in football. However, that problem isn't going away. And whilst I don't think our owners are going anywhere anytime soon either, I think that we can all hope that whoever buys Manchester United or Liverpool, one of the 15 or so unsuccessful parties that had the money to buy them, will look at Tottenham Hotspur and see us as a desirable asset as well, because I think we are. And then maybe we can compete. So I'm with the kind of idea of the owners moving on, and I have been for a while. But like I say, I'm not going to reflect on them in the same vein. But I also would say to those people that are Levy out, if you want people like me who traditionally haven't been on that side of the argument to move over and to join you, or to create more, I don't know, harmony and synchronicity among the fan base, then the best way to not do that is to have a unipolar blame game model where you openly acknowledge that despite there being reasonable apathy towards more than just the owners at Tottenham Hotspur, that silence yourselves on that, quash that thought, because all of your energy has to be behind the owners. The owners can only be the only problem. That to me is a really bad way, a really silly way of trying to go about achieving your ends. To me, I feel like people who have reasonable, balanced opinions are far more likely to win over the majority. Because people that sit on the extremes of either end are always the vocal minorities. The vast majority of people on any conversation point are somewhere in the middle. And the best way to get them onto your side is to be reasonable by saying that whilst Daniel Levy and Enoch are 8% of the problem, they get a slice of the pie. They get that big, giant, double XL pizza pie. However big it is, the ownership for sure get a slice of it. But so too can other things, other elements explain why Tottenham's season seems to be going from okay to bad to worse. And those factors are plentiful, right? So to dismiss the reality that, you know, our players on the pitch are making individual mistakes that they wouldn't normally make, that have cost us maybe 5 or 6 points this season. Difficult to know how much of an impact they have, because had they not made the mistakes, you don't know for sure what would have happened during the rest of the game. It's a whole new reality, a whole new timeline. But to be presumptuous if Hugo Lloris hadn't made those 3 or 4 mistakes, if Eric Dyer hadn't made those 3 or 4 mistakes that all led to goals, we'd probably be 8 points better off, or 6 points better off, something like that. Like, that's something that's outside of Daniel Levy's control, because those players are capable of not making those mistakes. That they're super low on confidence. They're atypical, not typical mistakes that those players are making. I also don't think that there's anywhere near enough questioning of the performances of Sonny and Bissouma and Romero. All great players. Bissouma, when Tottenham signed Bissouma in the summer, everybody, not just in Tottenham Hotspur, but everybody around the Premier League football scene generally was saying Tottenham are doing bits. What a player they've signed. Yet the player that has Bissouma on his shirt in a lily white shirt is a shadow of a player that we saw at Brighton. Is that Daniel Levy's fault? Is that the ownership's fault? No, but it's a big factor. What about Sonny? What has happened to him? He's been, generally speaking, the worst player, or one of the worst players, in 90% of Tottenham's games this season. He has gone from hero to zero in terms of form and contribution over the summer. And some people are terrified of even questioning him at all because of the Sun loyalty camp that would go after you. I don't think he gets a reasonable enough amount of criticism. Same with Christian Romero. Put aside whether he gave a shit about Tottenham for the World Cup or whatever, or whether he was injured or wasn't he injured. His form and his attention span, he looks nothing like the player he did last season. That's a problem. You can make the same argument for the vast majority of players on the pitch. The only players that look better than last season probably are Bentancur and Højbjerg. That's it. Everybody else is a weaker version of themselves than they were last season. And on that basis, there should be that's just one of the reasons why you should be looking at Antonio Conte. Right? Not because you want him to leave, not because you're asking for Conte to go, but because you're saying, well, is this guy worth the £16 million, or should he at least be getting some of the blame that he's not getting from some sections of the fan base who want this unipolar ideology of, no, we have to put all of our energy in one basket? Because it comes across as disingenuous if you don't recognise that Antonio Conte has a lot to answer for. Why can't he get more out of these players? These players, whether or not they're good enough to win the Champions League or to win the Premier League, we all know the answer to that is zero. But they're better than Aston Villa. They're better than Brentford. They're better than Nottingham Forest in the Carabao Cup. They're better than Marseille. Better than Sporting Lisbon. Better than Frankfurt. Better than 70% of the teams that we played this year, we have a better squad than. So Antonio Conte should be getting more juice from the squeeze than he is. And if you say you can't blame Conte for anything because it dilutes the narrative, then you're being partisan, and for me, that would steer me away from a movement, not towards it. So all I want to see, guys, is wherever you are, whether you're Levy in, whether you're Levy out, whether you're Conte in, whether you're Conte out, however you feel about Heung-min Son, however you feel about Hugo Lloris and Eric Dyer and Ben Davies and all of that, just recognise that there is so much room in the middle of the road. Because everybody right now is on one extreme or the other, yelling across the road at the other side that you're a dickhead, you're what's wrong, you're the problem, no, you're the problem, no, you're the problem. It's fruitless, it's pathetic, it's unnecessary. And if everybody could come into the middle of the road and acknowledge that there's so much going wrong at Tottenham, that there's enough pie to go around, then I think reason and logic can then take over and be the sensible person in the room. And that's the way that I feel about everything that's going on right now. I know that it's going to get even worse tonight if Tottenham Hotspur lose away at Palace. For what it's worth, that game's going to be an absolute shit show in terms of options for us, because... Oh, sorry, that's the other thing I forgot to mention about the reasons why we're struggling. Injuries. And not enough credibility is good, because if you ever call out and say to other fans from other teams, look at the injuries we've had, that's always dismissed. Everyone has injuries, bro. But I don't think most teams have had injuries like Tottenham have had this season. Not just the frequency of the injuries, but the consistency of the position that the injured players come from, i.e. mainly in our forward line at the moment. And also the inability of our medical team to fix an issue. Like short-term issues seem to always relapse, And long-term issues always seem to take a lot longer than they're supposed to. Like the medical team need a lot of accountability as well. Not something we spend enough time talking about. And for me, Crystal Palace tonight is going to be exactly the same as it was against Aston Villa, with the changes being that because Bissouma is suspended, you're probably going to see, in my opinion, Pape Sarr come in, which will be interesting. And I don't know if Hugo Lloris will be kept in his place or whether he'll be swapped out for Fraser Foster. I think probably you have to put Foster in, which is another concern for me, but they're both as iffy as each other. And I think you'll still see Brian Hill play because Conte said that he did enough in the last game to satisfy him. So it's going to be a really difficult game, and our bench is going to look even weaker tonight than it did against Villa because we have Bissouma missing, right? So yeah, I mean that bench looks awful, but I don't think that you can blame Daniel Levy for injuries. When you look at the fact that we have 0 strikers, well, we have 6 strikers in the squad, 6 forwards in the squad, and for 80% of the season, at least 2 of them have been out injured. At least 2. At the moment, it's 3. It's terrible, and it's disastrous. But I don't think that you can blame the owners for not having 9 forwards for the off chance that 7 of them are injured at the same time. I don't think you can factor that in. I think you have to just, at some point, shake hands. There's always a risk of things like that happening. God forbid Harry Kane gets a yellow card tonight, guys, because he'll be out for the next game, which of course is against Arsenal. And then we'll have to play, I think, Sonny and probably Perisic up front in that situation. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Guys, all I'm asking you for is to come into the middle. Like, for me, I just think that everyone can be a little bit more balanced, a little bit more reasonable. We can all be friends if we can all start the conversation and start the debate with, let's start by acknowledging that there's a lot of blame to go around and it shouldn't all just be in one direction because nobody's doing their job at Tottenham Hotspur right now. That's my take on it. But if you don't agree with me, if you want to go down the other path, I still respect it. Good luck to you. I hope you get what you want because we all want the same thing at the end of the day, which is Tottenham Hotspur to be successful. We just go about it in different ways. Like, share and subscribe, guys. I'll see you on the next one. As always, bye-bye.